I'm normally in that chair, and she's over here.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order at 5 o'clock. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. We don't have Diana. John, could you lead us in our pledge?
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, sorry, I didn't report. We did meet in closed session and we had no reportable actions. Per board policy 2350, any person may address the board at this time, either for items on the agenda and matters of interest to the public that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Maximum of 5 minutes is allowed for each speaker with a maximum time of 15 minutes per item unless otherwise extended by the board. Do we have any public comments concerning items on the agenda? Any public comments concerning items not on the agenda?
Well, my name is Steve Howland. I'm an English instructor, and I am co-chair along with, or co-advisor along with Stacy Brand for the Quill Creative Writing Club on campus. And I brought to you today your complimentary edition of the 4th annual working title Creative Writing Magazine. This magazine is created entirely by the students at COS with student submissions. As you can see, it's high quality. We have our student editor here, Laura Brown, taking pictures right now.
Hi.
For next year's edition. Exactly. I'm sure this will show up on Facebook at some point. The students who submitted their work had to go through student adjudication through our own editing process. Our students selected the pieces for it, and Laura and her crew, who are all over here on one of these early pages, once I find it, took care of the job of putting that into the actual magazine itself. Well, I can't find it right now, but it's in here. If you're interested in getting a hold of one of these copies, you should let me know. I'm Stephen Howland. You can catch me at stevens@cos.edu. And we are asking, if I remember right, Laura, $4 or $6 this year? $6 donation to help printing this magazine. But we'd like to also thank you so much for making the foundation available to us to help print this magazine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, did another adjustment. You told me to do it, I could, don't tell you. Okay, we have an adjustment to the agenda.
I'd like to make note for public record that on the agenda this evening, we have one of the items properly agendized, which is our renewal of an MOU with Tulare Joint Union High School District. And one of the attachments for that references the meeting minutes from the joint meeting we recently held on October 24th between the COS Board of Trustees and the Tulare Joint Union High School District Board of Education. And for the attachment that goes along with that tonight, I wanted the board to know that when you came to your place this evening, we have submitted a revised set of the minutes for that joint meeting. So if you would take these and attach them to enclosure 12, when we get to that item, we'd like you to consider these revised minutes as a part of that action item, as opposed to the earlier minutes that went out. And there's copies right here for the public if they would like the revised minutes for the item that's already on our agenda.
Any questions? Okay, we'll move on to our board and executive staff reports. Student trustee report, I'm hoping Diana, do you know if she's not coming at all, or if maybe run late? Well, if she comes, we'll give her a chance to give her a report whenever she comes in. Okay, do we have any board member reports? No? Okay, yeah. Foundation report.
Good evening, board. It's been 3 short weeks since we last spoke, so I just have a brief report. Our program review resubmittal was received and has now received a rating of satisfactory, and so we are now in good standing. This year will be a lot of data gathering and building baseline data for better performance measurement in the future. Also at our last meeting, I shared with you our launching of our application process for scholarships for the 2014-2015 year. We are now 3 weeks into that 7-week process, and so far we've received, 770 applications have begun online, and 57 of them have already been submitted. And compared to last year after the whole 7 weeks, we had 796. applications begun. So we're on a really good trajectory of getting more applications. We do need to get them submitted, but if I get them captured as started, I can start contacting those folks directly and saying, get your application finished. So it's looking good, but I did want to report to you the next time we'll be able to get you like week 6, the end of week 6. Okay, we also have an event coming up on Saturday put on by Visalia Parks and Recreation that I just wanted to make you aware of. There's a ribbon cutting for the Riverway Sports Park, Phase 3. And our connection to that is merely that part of the Porter funding to the district was set aside as a Porter Community Use Fund, and some of that money did go to that project, and so we're being invited to participate in that, and I will certainly be there. And that is this Saturday. I believe it starts at 10 a.m. Our invested assets, I've been talking over the last few months that we were going to move to a new investment firm. Those assets are in the process of transit. They're in transit right now, and so they should be effective November 5th, the transfer. And I have 3 upcoming event dates for you. I have the softball fundraiser, which is a wiffle ball tournament here on campus this Saturday. I have the Power of the Purse, which is on November 21st, and today I brought in the small envelope in front of each of your seats, I brought one of the invitations for you to either keep or pass along to someone. And also on December 12th, the Hanford Christmas Tree Auction is an event put on by the Chamber, but the Hanford chapter of our foundation is participating in it as their form of raising funds this year. And they're well underway in their campaign for that. That's all I have. If there's any questions,
No, I was going to ask if the softball, the wiffle ball tournament was legit, I did get a call today for that.
it's legit.
Legitimate.
Yeah, I knew it was when I asked you to write the check, and they said POS Foundation, and I was going to go.
Right. There's, last I heard from one of the assistant coaches, there was over 25 teams
So
on
I heard it today.
Wow, really?
Sounds like it's going to be lots of people.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Do we have any questions of Mr. Foster? Okay, Dr. Lucerna, accreditation report. Thank you, Tim.
Good evening, everybody. As you know, our accreditation visit is coming up next week, and we've now received the names of the people who will be coming to visit us. And so we have our chair, and then there's 4 members from our previous team, and one member that's a new member who hasn't been to the college before. And so they'll be arriving Tuesday evening, and they'll spend all day Wednesday and all day Thursday with us. And we're still waiting to see the list of the people they want to interview or meet with throughout the day. We have invited them to several meetings that we have happening on those 2 days. So they should be able to attend a few of our governance meetings during the 2 days that they're here. So we're looking forward to that, and they've been in communication with us, and we've got everything prepared and ready for their visit, and we're looking forward to it. The other thing we have this Friday, November 8th at 3 p.m. in the theater is the culmination of the 19 days of accreditation. So I think you guys have all been getting the emails, although I haven't seen any of you win a prize, so I don't know if you're answering the questions or not.
I asked a few, I don't know if you were right.
So that is going to be the culmination of those activities. We'll have kind of an accreditation celebration, review the questions and that we've had throughout the time. And we've had great participation. We're close to 200 people participating on a daily basis. So those are the upcoming events. And again, the timeline in our letter, they will be sending the report forward after they leave, and then the report will go before the commission at its meeting January 8th through 10th, 2014. And we will have a chance to present at that meeting. We have a very short time period that the president and the board president and myself and Dr. Trimble will attend. And we get to do a 2-minute presentation, and then we have about 3 minutes for questions and answers. So we'll look forward to going there, and we won't know the answers or the final result until February. So Any questions?
No reason why we need to wait.
Just processing.
Yeah.
They take them all in, they do all the reviews. Because remember, we're not the only college going through accreditation right now. And then they have a timeline for getting the action letters put together and everything going on one mass meeting.
So they're working that whole month and afterwards. It's not like they decide that day.
No,
Correct.
they actually, in their regulations, say 30 days to provide the feedback to the colleges, so it's a process. Preparing letters and all that. Any other questions?
No questions, board members? Thank you. I think we've all made ourselves available if you need us, Jennifer, as board members. I've set those dates aside, so
Okay,
hopefully.
thank you.
Okay, Mr. Carrizosa, Superintendent.
2 items really quickly along the lines of accreditation and just our ongoing implementation of COS 2.0. I have an item for you tonight. I'm going to try to do this fairly regularly now, is bring forward to the board items associated with the timelines that are in our new processes. So if you look over at our integrated planning model over here and you recognize that up there at the top, we've got our mission statement and then of course our strategic plan, and we work through that annual process of program review, resource allocation, implement, and then assess. At the end of each year, you'll notice in the upper left-hand edge of that circle, it says annual college report on the master plan. This is one of the new pieces in our structure and in our systems. And so what I wanted to bring to your attention is, first of all, know that it's in the integrated planning manual, and that is where you would find it. You have hard copy and you have a copy of that you can access online. And what that's going to be for us is it's going to be an annual report that we'll publish, and it's going to be how the college has done in relationship to the 8 district objectives that we adopted earlier this year. Remember that process we went through to take the strategic plan, which was 134 measurable objectives from 20 areas and 6 major goals, and break that down to 8 measurable objectives. You can see those district objectives in your enclosure here, and then what I've prepared for you are just excerpts from our actual integrated planning manual so that you can see how this process works in terms of reporting on the master plan. And then you can also see the timeline for preparing. And the reason I wanted you to take a peek at the timeline is that it happens pretty quickly. You'll notice that it falls under initially the process falls under the Institutional Planning and Effectiveness Committee, and they're responsible for proposing a strategic plan review process. That all happens in February. In the month of March, responsible parties submit their progress updates to the Institutional Planning and Effectiveness Committee. The committee goes through, consolidates the report of progress, analyzes the progress report in terms of effectiveness and moving the district toward the achievement of the district objectives, edits or augments the actions for the coming year as needed based on the assessment of the outcomes, and then identifies improvements in the district policies and procedures that might result from these actions. And then you can see we move the process forward into April, and that's actually bringing a draft of the annual report to the District Governance Senate. And then in May, the District Governance Senate would incorporate any feedback, prepare a final draft, submit it to the Superintendent President. We're doing all of this so that we can bring a report on the master plan to the board for your information by May of 2014. So I wanted to make sure that you were just in touch with the processes and the timelines. So we're actually living COS 2.0 now, and we're going right down the list and following the steps as we have them laid out. We'll be evaluating this process at the end of the year. One of the things that's come up already is that it does happen fairly quickly, and it happens relatively early in the year to start gathering year-end information by March, because there's still a little bit of time left in the semester to gather year-end information. But we're also balancing that between trying to have a report that the District Governance Senate can act on, Academic Senate can review prior to May, because in June and July, the Academic Senate and faculty in general are not active on campus. So it's that balancing act between trying to wait long enough to get good information, but get it in time to have a report to the board by the end of the semester. Can I answer any questions on that process update for you? The second item I wanted to just highlight this evening was the opportunity to introduce some new folks in our administrative ranks who have taken positions with us. In 2 cases, replacing existing administrators, and in 1 case, an interim appointment that we've made for restoring a position that had been lost last year. So I think you've seen the e-news announcements on all of these, and tonight I wanted to make sure that you got a chance to put a name to the face if you don't recognize our folks. But I'd like to first introduce our new Dean of Arts and Letters, who is replacing Stephanie Collier in that position, who was interim there, and then she took the position as a full-time Dean in Student Services, and that is Mrs. Karen Roberts. Karen, say hello. Most recently, Karen's been our director in the nursing program. She has a long history here at College of the Sequoias, a successful role as an administrator in our district, and she's excited about the opportunity to move into a more academic type area and integrate everything she knows about the vocational and technical skills into the academic area and arts and letters as well. So we're excited to have Karen in that position now. And we're in transition because she's leaving the Director of Nursing position and moving into the Dean of Arts and Letters. And so right behind her, we have placed an interim Director of Nursing, and that is Mrs. Belin Kirsten. Hi, Belin. Belin has been the division chair in the nursing department and has a number of years serving with us in the nursing department, and has had an opportunity to assist Karen in a number of the administrative responsibilities, and now is excited about the opportunity to get in as an interim and get the full scope of the responsibility as the Director of Nursing for the second semester. And so we're excited to have Belin in there, and that helps us make a smooth transition because they're both familiar and both on campus and able to help each other in the transition. And then the third position that I'd like to announce is replacing our Dean of Career Technical Education. You'll recall that when we opened the Tulare Center last January, we actually combined two positions. We took Dr. Dudo, who was at the time our Dean of Career Technical Education and Workforce Development, and named him the provost of the Tulare College Center, and also required that he continue to assume those dean responsibilities simultaneously. Now that we're fully open at the Tulare campus and getting ready for continued increased size and scope and activity and enrollment, we appreciate the board's support in bringing back the Dean of Career Technical Education position for us. It's an important one because of the categorical programs, because of the technical requirements, because of the funding that it generates for the college, but also because of the required accreditation standards that are important to us in that area now and need our full attention. So we're pleased to introduce as our interim Dean of Career Technical Education, Dr. Luann Waldner. And you will remember Luann, who has served most recently in our business, industry, and community service education program, contract education, credit, and not-for-credit education, and also our liaison and coordinator for our C6 grant, which has been an experimental pilot grant that we have doing workforce development models for the Federal Department of Labor. So Luann brings a wealth of experience there, and again, an interim opportunity for her to cross over. We've got some transition meetings set up with Dr. Dudo, Dr. Waldner, myself, Dr. Lacerna, Christine Staton, to start lining out how responsibilities can start to be divided and delineated effective January 1st for Luann's official start. We will be looking to backfill the position that Luann will be vacating. That's funded by the categorical dollars there in that program. But it's important because not only do we have our VIX responsibilities, but we have a commitment to the C6 and to the region for some leadership roles that she plays there, so we can't necessarily leave that vacant. So we'll be looking at how best to manage those administrative responsibilities that are going to be leaving Luann's going to be leaving behind as she moves into the dean position. The good news is that person will be reporting directly to her. So again, like in the case of having Belin and Karen both here and Cindy all on the same staff, we've got all the people involved in the positions working next to each other to help with a smooth transition. And I'd offer either the dean or vice president to say anything else that you'd like to about our appointments. Cindy or Jennifer, anything you guys want to add?
I think we're very much looking forward. I think both from my perspective, Belin and Karen have done an outstanding job over the last few years and have maintained a high quality, nursing and allied health program, and I think both Belinda and Karen will do an outstanding job, and you can really count on them, and so can the faculty and staff in both those areas. So I look forward to working closely with Belinda in her transition, and of course, always being available and a mentor for Karen as a fellow dean now. Looking forward to all that.
Karen, Lynn, nothing to say?
I would say thanks,
A good shock, right?
Yes, very excited, very happy. I always tell people COS has been very good to me with 4 different careers that I've had here. My nursing career, I graduated in 1982, came back from a teaching career here. I was very happy with that. Got to be the director of nurses, and now to even be able to be a dean in another area of the college. I'm very excited to learn all about language arts and fine arts and the library. And I'm just kind of excited. Happily overwhelmed.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
I want to say the same thing. I graduated from this college in '69 as a math major back then. And then went on for nursing, and it's been a wonderful career. And having the opportunity to teach and be part of the faculty was wonderful. And now I'm really excited about being the director of nursing and working closely with everyone at faculty.
Hey, Lynn, top that.
I know, I'm excited to be Career Technical Education Dean, to continue to build on the work that has been done. Career Technical Education is a third of what our mission is, and so having the strength of that program to support our local industry, I think, is critical, and so I'm pleased and excited to work from students to industry to continue to grow what's already a solid and great program.
Okay, well, thank you. Board members, do you have any questions?
Pleased to have you all in your positions.
Yeah, thanks for coming to the board meetings. We really appreciate you being able to come and be introduced. Although all of you are familiar, so it's not new faces. I can't say that this time. So, okay. That conclude your report?
Thank you.
President? Okay, we'll move on to our Academic Senate President's report. Dr. Pringle.
Good evening. The Academic Senate is starting to gear up for part of our 2.0 changes, and our agendas are starting to get ridiculously long. For example, next week, the new program review is coming to Senate, both District Governance Senate and Academic Senate. We're rewriting our Constitution and bylaws so that they match with the governance. We have a new policy coming forward from the Curriculum Committee on General Ed. It's a busy time. One of the things that is on our agenda, we have created a new task force, is to look at the new accreditation standards that are out in order to make recommendations to the commission. Myself and 2 others will be attending the plenary session at the end of this week. They will be making, the ACCJC is making a presentation on those standards to the State Academic Senate in preparation to requesting feedback. There are already on the books at least 6 resolutions statewide of things they'd like to see changed already from the new standards. So I expect that to be quite a hot topic at the session. And a lot of the things are things that we have talked about as we tried to address our show cause that made it more difficult for us. Things that it didn't have to be that difficult. So I think that the commission can look forward to quite a bit of feedback on that from us as well as other people. But one of the things that I think is important is that we do provide that feedback, because they need to be responsive to us, but if we don't tell them what we think, then we have nobody to blame but ourselves. We can at least try. And I think that if there's enough voices out there, that I think they will listen.
Thank you. Costa President's report. No report? Okay, thank you. And our CSE report, Mr. Lamar.
No report.
SOFA report?
Don Nichols sent us and sent his apologies. He was not able to be here tonight, so no for software.
Okay. We'll move on to our general obligation bonds. These are announcements only, correct?
Correct.
Our school facilities improvement district, SFID number 2 by Celia area, next scheduled meeting will be November 7th, 3 o'clock, by State campus. And our SFID number 3 for the Tulare area, letter J, will be November 9th, at Tulare College Center, 3 o'clock.
Great, thank you. And I just wanted to offer a commendation to the staff. I know Christine, Karen Pauls, Megan Pierce, a number of folks have been working hard. Remember, we had a number of vacant seats, and so we've got a nice, nearly full slate of officers and members on both committees. So we'll be reconvening, and it'll allow us to bring an official report to you in December.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, moving on, our information items and discussion items, board policies and administrative procedures, new and revised, Mr. President.
Okay, these are back before you for a first reading. You might remember a couple of these. We had to pull from the agenda early, take them back through the process and double check. So I want to bring to your attention administrative procedure, which is really for your information tonight. It's 4237 in academic services. And this is in the category of articulation. And I think if you go, you can see that we have some bold and some underlined, which are added new, and we have some strike through, which are recommended deletions. And if you get to the second page, I'm going to draw your attention to the major change here. It's under credit for classes. And it's how we articulate credit for high school credits for students that are taking college level courses while they're still in high school. And primarily, this has been changed under number 3. It says credit for articulated classes is valid for 2 years only. That references the length of the articulation agreements, which is 2 years. Consequently, grades will be transcribed at COS when the qualifying high school student successfully completes the articulated coursework. You can see that we struck out the requirement to be 3 units in residence. And is a student in the COS banner system. So what we tried to do here was simplify the requirement for a high school student who takes a COS articulated course at their high school to be able to actually get the credit for that course when they complete the course. It used to be that we had a minimum 3 unit and a residency requirement, and they had to officially enroll. Now we're really going to play it just a little bit more straight, and as soon as they've completed the course and enter into our banner system, because you can enter into the banner system without necessarily fully enrolling here. What if that student wants to take the 3 units they earned with us and take it on to their 4-year college? We want to be able to give them the opportunity to get that on their transcript. This will enable them to do that. So that's the first reading for you tonight. The next one is Board Policy 7120 under Human Resources, and this was revised language, as you can see in bold. We wanted to include in the category of procedures for hiring not only our classified employees, but management employees and interim management employees and confidential employees. This was in part in response to one of the requirements in our show cause report for accreditation, that we had all of our hiring procedures for all of our staff in a similar format, housed in a similar place, and able to be easily located. That now happens under faculty hiring procedures on our College of the Sequoias website under Human Resources. And then the board policy 7130 is actually a similar revision, except it speaks specifically to forms of compensation. And there's a new requirement in the law that this be noted here, that while we want to have salary schedules, compensation, and benefits, including health and welfare benefits for all classified employees and each contract employee, established in accordance with collective bargaining processes if applicable and ratified by the board. The next section is required because it's asking us to make sure that we don't have any sort of an incentive or reward policy for faculty who would earn more if they recruited foreign students to come to our college. So you can read that second section there. It's prohibition of incentive compensation. And it's specifically around the process of recruiting foreign students to come to the college. I think there was some trouble with colleges paying employees more if they could recruit foreign students to come to their college. Yeah. Okay.
What was the issue with foreign?
Well, I think, yeah,
The out-of-state
Yeah,
tuition.
yeah, I think if you have foreign students come and they're paying foreign student tuition, there's more money to the college. So some colleges, I don't know if, John, you might be able to speak to it, I don't know if any colleges actually had employees assigned to do it, but they may have contracted services with recruitment type officers to go out, and they were paying them money to bring more foreign students in, taking a little bit of what they earned off the foreign student tuition to pay the contractor, and then reaping the rest of the benefits. So, for every good problem, there's a good solution. And then the last one for your first reading is actually a new policy, and we've codified now in 7150 processes for employee evaluations. And you can see there that we've noted the evaluation process, referenced the master agreements and any connection that there might be to the master agreements, and have recommended some deletions there. These all first and second readings have been through Academic Senate, Student Senate, and District Government Senate for your first reading tonight.
Okay, any questions?
Yeah, I'd like to know who does all this work. I mean, that's a ton of paperwork you guys go through.
We're a paper processing machine. We're a bureaucracy, but we're a more efficient one now.
Well, Clea is doing some of it, we heard that in her comments. I did anyways.
He's getting some agenda stuff now.
Okay, thank you. Accreditation requirements for institutions set standards, Dr. Osorna and Dr. Osgood.
What Dr. Oster's gonna present today is information required for our annual report. So as you know, we do a self-evaluation every 6 years. In between that, on the third year, in between we do a mid-year report, and every year we do an annual report. Half of it is fiscal and the other half is academic. Part of what was added this year is on institutional set standards. It was added in March of 13. And so in March of 14, we were required to report out on what our institution set standards are in 5 areas, which Dr. Oster's going to go over with you. But what we need to do between now and basically February is come to an agreement and discuss across campus what our institution set standards are going to be in the 5 areas, which he'll explain to you, but they're in course completion, student retention, degree completion, transfer, and certificate completion. And so what the process is, we're presenting to you tonight is the information on how we're going to start that discussion and how we're having that discussion across campus. We're bringing it forward through the whole governance process, through Senate, and through District Government, Academic Senate, District Government Senate. And then our plan is, at your February board meeting, is to come back with the recommendations that we've just come up with throughout the next 4 months on all 5 of the set standards. So today we're presenting you information and methodology about how we're going to do it, and then our plan will be in February to bring forward the 5 areas for your approval and information in February. And that will be just in time for our report in March. So Dr. Oster's I'm going to let him go through the details.
Okay, as Dr. Osorna mentioned, this is for discussion purposes, information purposes. First, I'd like to talk about a little bit the rationale of setting institutional standards. You may wonder where these setting standards ideas come from. This is not a new idea or new regulation. It has been there, but for the past couple of years, they have been reinterpreted. So there's a new interpretation of old existing regulations from the USDA, U.S. Department of Education. They have asked last year their evaluation team test. This is a they send to evaluation team members if they were visiting campuses. So they will pay specific attention to these standard areas. In the past, they were collecting data of these 5 areas Jennifer mentioned briefly. But different from the past, last year, they started asking for standards. So what is your standard for that particular area? So what does that mean? So we will briefly talk about the report that Jennifer was talking about. The report is an annual report along with the fiscal report. All the colleges, they're required to submit this report. In this report, there are about 50 questions. Of these 50 questions, about 10 of them are under student achievement. So under student achievement section, they require information in these areas. The course completion rate, student retention rate, that's from fall to fall, student degree completion, student transfer to four-year institutions, and student certificate completion. So what is a standard? So there is no standard definition for setting a standard. It's actually, this is their definition, so they define it as the level of performance set by the institution to meet educational quality and institutional effectiveness. So some of you may be familiar with benchmarking, setting high-level goals to improve the organization or institution. So this is different than benchmarking. When you're setting a benchmark, you're setting a place as a goal that where you want to be. When you're setting a standard, you're deciding how low, how high or how low should you set the standard. So we said that is the quality and effectiveness part for the district. So we're not setting a benchmark up here. We're trying to set a base quality level for the institution.
Be within a certain, below and within the
Yes, in the range. So we'll have a couple more slides. Yes, we'll cover that. Correct. So what we have been doing, Dr. Lisson and I, we've been talking to some colleagues in the field, talking to some other districts, institutional researchers to see how they actually approach this issue. So based on our research and discussion, so we came up with our own method that we think is going to be helpful to us. So we're proposing methods for both setting the standards and also using the standards. So two different steps. While we're setting the standards, so we want to have some guiding principles. So we're focusing on level of expectations for education quality and institutional effectiveness again. So we believe that these standards need to be reasonable. They need to be appropriate for our purposes, and they also need to be realistic. We cannot set an unrealistic standard. Our main method is actually 3 steps. So the first step is, so we review our most current and historic data, the multi-year data. When data is available long term, actually we get a sense, a picture of how a district is performing. Also we wanted to collect data and desegregate by demographics. So, for example, by ethnicity, age, and gender. So we want to be able to see how we're serving different groups out of the district. So this is when the data is available. The second step is generating a multi-year averages for performance for the district. So most places actually they use 5-year data. So we wanted to use 8 years of data, so longer term, so we'll get a better picture. Some of the data points we have actually based on cohort data. It's available only for 5 years, so we're including 5 years. But most of the areas we have 8 years of historic data. The third step in this process is just determining the standard. So we're doing this data collection and analysis, which will help us to set the standards. Data analysis, they are not the only thing in this process. So this is in a way kind of subjective process. At the end, we will insert a judgment. What data and analysis are going to help us actually reduce our own biases while we're inserting the judgment. So we need to consider the institutional history and the context. I like to quote one of my professors regarding the importance of context. It says context is very important. Without a context, data becomes pretext. So we want to avoid that. So we need to learn the history and context of our institution. Also, the other part of the method, so this is, once we set the method for generating the standard, so how are we going to interpret that standard? How are we going to use that? So we found this method from the people on the field. So they have a performance range and color coding. So as you can see here, if we are 5% above or below, so we're good. On target. So if we perform more than 5% above, so it's excellent. But there is the section that's most important. What if we don't meet the standard set? So what's the range for that one? So how are we going to interpret that? So that's the area we call it that needs attention. So again, the whole purpose of setting standard is just for improvement purposes. So we're not competing with anybody. We're not comparing ourselves with anybody. This is an internal process for us to improve the district's effectiveness. Again, step one, here's an example. This is an exercise that we went through. So we review the most current historical performance data. So you'll see this is for course completion from fall to fall. So we have data from fall 2005 to fall 2012. We also have not to compare ourselves to the district, the state, but just to get a little bit perspective. So where we stand compared to the state. So we also included the state totals in there. You'll see our district total. And also we have disaggregated data by ethnicity. So again, this is from fall to fall data for course completion. So our next step was to generate multi-year averages for performance. So we have done that. So there's an example here. So we calculated the 8-year averages for each ethnic group that we're serving at our district. We also have the 8-year state average, in case we want to know where we stand at. For example, 8-year state average is 67%, and 8-year district average is 67%. This is a kind of coincidence. It could have been different too. So, but at the same time, it tells us we're not far off from the state performance. You'll see the data for different ethnic groups in there. For example, non-resident alien, the 76%. Then selecting Asian students, 72%. So there are differences among these groups in terms of their performance. The next step, the third step, is the most critical step. This is where we set the standard. So we have analyzed the data, historic data. We know the most current data. For example, in this case, fall 2012 data is 69%. And 8-year district average, 67%. And by ethnicity, we looked at the data. The lowest was 57 for one of our groups. So we want to keep that as a context. Again, we're not going to use any of these numbers to calculate or generate an average for the standard. So we will look at these three numbers and then come up with this level that will satisfy our needs. So if, for example, if so our district level is 67%, some of the colleges, they actually went there with their district average, 67%. If we did that, so we know that we have groups at our district, they're already performing below that level. So we're already not meeting the standard of the groups. If we set the standard below, that is another thing we need to think about. So why are we setting ourselves very low? So again, so this is where we have the discussions based on the analysis and historical context. And the context, then come up with a recommendation for to set the standard. So, any questions?
Yeah, who's gonna set those standards?
So we're currently collecting, soliciting feedback for our method and the type of data we're collecting. Senior management, we discuss this on a regular basis. As we collect feedback from all the district stakeholders, we will make recommendations to all the stakeholders and then get another feedback.
Ultimately, Greg, the process though includes using that diagram that you see right behind Dr. Oster there. Recommendations are now going through Academic Senate. Academic Senate is seeing one or two of these every meeting now to take a look at the methodology and provide us feedback and recommendations. District Governance Senate will do the same thing. And last week we were actually in here presenting the information to Student Senate. So when that all gets finalized and the recommendation is completed, it comes to this board for final ratification.
Any other questions, comments?
I look forward to seeing the data, and I guess, speaking just for myself, I know it seems sometimes we get bogged down in breaking down the data so much that we miss the target. And so I'm looking at the 5 standards and hoping we can really, dissect those and know what those numbers mean to us and as an institution, how we improve or we know where we're at least, instead of taking the time to break it down so much that we forget the purpose of looking at the data. Does that make sense?
It does. And I
To my
think
board members, I go,
one of the
sometimes
things
we get too detailed.
One of the things that we've been talking about in this exercise is Dr. Oster said it's not setting benchmarks. Establishing district objectives and goals to achieve will be separate from this. This is our base model. As an institution, what do we stand for? Is our standard 65%, 67%? What is it? So in the end, because it's subjective, it does become a little bit of an ethical question. We know of some institutions that have taken their lowest subgroup and gone 10% below that and said, we'll establish that as our standard, which means we can never miss. Okay. But you also haven't put your institution under any kind of internal scrutiny to continually get better. And remember the key thing, we've been sharing this as we've been talking among faculty, we'll never be non-compliant in an accreditation. If every subgroup in our population is not achieving our standards, we'll be non-compliant if we're not taking any corrective actions. So the main thing we have to have in place is a plan in annual activities to continue to try and address any subgroup that might be falling below. And from our standpoint, that would be a good thing, and that would be a way of improving the whole institution. Because anything we're doing for a subgroup, if it's system-wide, is going to float all boats a little bit higher.
Right. How often will you raise your standards?
Any questions?
We're going to have to look at them on an annual basis anytime we submit the report. But I think if you look at that, I think it's the second slide, it talks about what the new direction they've given the evaluation teams. So when the evaluation team comes out, it's the one that had the U.S. Department of Education guidelines.
Yeah, the letter.
They're going to actually look and see the data, are they appropriate? And then they're also, what the main thing they're going to do, if you look at the last 2 sentences, they want to see how it leads towards our mission. So how do we tie those set standards back to our mission, and are we fulfilling our mission based on what we've set the standards and where our students are in their success and completion based on those standards. So it's something we're going to have to look at regardless on an annual basis in the annual report, but then we have to realize that that's we're going to be, evaluated on that. And then when the visiting team comes out next week, they're going to look for where we are in the process of setting these standards as well.
Go ahead.
And if our standard is pretty high, 100%, then we would be under, you say you're evaluating on whether or not we address those deficiencies and how we address them. Well, if our standard was 100%, it would take tremendous resources to fix that. On the other hand, we set our standard real low, well then, that's a budget problem. My question is in picking that number, how much influence will availability of resources have in deciding what's reasonable? I'm not sure I'm getting my point across.
No, I think
If you have this many resources and you pick a standard that requires this many resources or this many resources, how much influence does that have on picking that number?
Well, I'm only speaking, I think, for ourselves and how we've discussed it at senior management, John, in addition to the feedback we'll get from faculty and from District Governance Senate. I think the availability of resources is a significant factor. I think we all know that there are things we could do if we had either more resources or the ability to rearrange the resources we have and use them more effectively. So I think that's why those three kind of guiding principles that were out there, is it reasonable? Is it appropriate? Is it realistic? We're going to have to apply those not only to the standard that we're trying to set, the content and demographics of our students, but our resources, our location, the geography of our area. That's where I think we're going to be compared to is, were we reasonable, were we appropriate, and were we, what was the third one? Realistic. Thank you, Megan. Reasonable, appropriate, realistic for our area, for our college, for our institution.
Well, how are you going to go about predicting in advance how much resources are needed for shortfalls of some amount? And what mechanism do we have to be able to kind of prefigure that out and come up with a reasonable answer?
Yeah, I don't know, I think we'll look at what we've done in the past where we may have invested specific resources to have a cause and effect relationship on an outcome. In my experience, in my short time here at COS, that's been mostly with some of our targeted or categorical programs, maybe more so than some of the general fund decisions that we've made. But that's all we really have to go on right now. I think going forward, you're going to be able, with the 8 district objectives we have now and the alignment of our current resources to those objectives, I think we're going to build a pattern of a little bit better cause and effect relationship between resources invested and the impact on the outcomes. I don't know how much of that we have. We're going to have to look for that in our database now. So I think there's, as Jennifer said, we're going to have to look at them annually. I think it's not healthy for an institution to change their standards every year. But I think maybe if you put yourself on some sort of a 3 or 5 year cycle, so you give your institution time to respond to trying to have a cause and effect relationship on these, that's probably going to be reasonable, it's going to be appropriate, and it's going to be realistic.
It sounds like something we need to do, but also sounds extremely difficult and has potential for being spirit crushing.
Well, that's why I think we want to approach it carefully, and we want everybody to be involved, because I think, again, if we're reasonable and we set some standards, knowing that we may have some, our trend data from the last 8 years might show us that 1 or 2 of our subgroups of student populations are going to be 1% or 2 below this, then we ought to be asking ourselves, what can we be doing with targeted resources that we have for those subgroups as a system? So if we're putting it in place for that subgroup, but it affects everybody who enrolls at the college, we might have an opportunity to make a difference. Those numbers are hard to move with all the variables that come into play. But I think it can provide us an incentive for continuous improvement if we're looking at our subgroups and trying to maneuver and adjust our resources on a regular basis to serve that purpose better.
That's right, that's right.
John, I went also to a conference, I think it was maybe 2 years ago, and I'm not sure of the name of the agency they put on, but it's under our college structure. And they talked a lot about, the amount of money that we get for FTES and how we spend it. And they made some interesting and compelling arguments on, sure, we can do more if we had more money, but we also need to look at the money we do get. And for every student who takes a class or two and leaves, and if we don't know why, and for every student that's here for 4 years and never finishes something and we don't know why, those are resources that can go to these students so that they can be successful. And I think sometimes it's more like Stan said, it's maybe not so much that we need more money, we need to see if we're utilizing the money the state's already given us in the right fashion. And we won't know that until we know why those students aren't completing or why they're leaving or where did we miss. And we've done it where you can't, the repeatability, we've made them all go through orientation. I would have to guess that all those things, these numbers are going to shift. They're not going to be in a year, and they're not going to be maybe even in 2 years, but I would hope with our COS 2.0 and those triggers that's going to start happening, and that shift of money is going to go to those where it can be utilized and they will finish or move on or get a job.
And that really is the objective with the new Student Success Act and the new Student Success plans that we're putting in place now, is all of that money that used to be our matriculation money, that should be going exactly toward these standards. And these standards, although they're not exactly the same, the definitions are different, they're very similar to what's in the scorecard that we're required to present by March of every year to the board. And so those numbers for this year's scorecard will be coming out at the end of January. So we actually, in February, we're probably looking at both sets of data, the institution set standards and the scorecard data. But realistically, those should align, and the funding that we're getting for the student success should be going toward the goals that we're setting in those areas.
And when we met with the Tulare Joint High School Board, I asked Dan, that obviously didn't have enough time, and I apologize for even requesting that of you, but I think it's so important to share with them the data because there's so much accountability on their part. Are they sending us students that aren't ready? Which high schools are sending us the students that are ready? And let's take it back to our high schools and make sure that we're helping facilitate that so that when they come to us, we know why and which groups. And I know that's more data to collect, but I know it's out there somewhere, and it shows where the high schools in which areas we can target almost, because we know those students are going to come in unprepared. And I can't wait to see the data, I'll be honest. I'm excited to see it. Yeah. But I'm not excited to set the standards. So good luck to you guys. You can add that to your agenda item.
It's already there.
Okay. My wife's here, sorry. Okay, quarterly financials. Ms. Hernandez.
This is the 311Q. It's the first quarter ending September 30th, 2013. As you can see on this first page, the first 3 columns are the actuals for the prior 3 years. The column on the far right is basically our working budget for the projection of 13-14 as of September 30th. You can see here, if you look at the actuals for 12-13, our ending fund balance was $2,737,411, or 6%. And I'll be going over that further on the budget accountability reports, which are next. The projected for 13-14, I wanted to highlight row C. It shows we have revenues under expenditures by $324,000. That's due to our MA fund balance draw. So MA we treat as a categorical. So if the funds aren't spent, they're automatically carried forward for the programs, the time study. But it's part of our unrestricted dollars, and that's the auditors make us set it up that way. So it is part of our unrestricted reserve, is why you see that as a fund balance draw. We've committed to carrying forward those dollars for the programs, the time survey, because they wouldn't be interested in time surveying if they lost the dollars. The next section is the FTES section. We see for 13-14, we're projecting at $9,387. That's our estimate of what we will need to be a mid-sized college this year. The next section is the cash section, and as you see for 13-14, as of September 30th, we have positive cash of 2.3 million. Usually at this time of year, they've already started the intra-year deferrals, so we would be already borrowing funds. So Prop 30 has given us some relief as far as cash flow, so at this point in time, our only borrowed funds are $1 million that we borrowed from our Linwood Reserve, so it's an internal borrowing. We don't charge ourselves interest, so it's a free loan to us. And that's mainly used just to be able to cross the month, because the payroll, we have to fund it a few days prior to apportionment coming. The next section is just the year-to-date actuals as of September 30th. And then we see that we have not settled with any bargaining units as of September 30th, so that will be on the next quarterly report. And then in the comments in section 6, we just have the comment that we are participating in the TRANS program for 13-14. We have a tax revenue anticipation note of $5 million, and as of September 30th, we did not draw any funds down. We will be drawing down funds in December of $2.5 million, and that's due to our property taxes not coming in until the end of December, and with the way our Christmas break falls, our payroll is very early in the month. So we have to have those strand dollars to cover the shortfall in property taxes, and that's what the program is for. So we are using it as intended. Were there any questions on this quarterly report?
I have a question. You piqued my interest when you said you bought Linwood funds. So is that farm?
Yes.
That gets paid back?
Yes,
out of-
those are temporary loans, so when the funds are received, when we have enough cash flow that, you know, we're covering our payroll without needing that few days, then we would pay back that loan.
So it's pretty short term.
Yes.
Yep.
Then why couldn't you use it for the 2.5 million rather than going out and paying interest for it?
The TRAN program, we have to prove that we need it. So we
You have
do,
to prove what?
that we need it. So we do actually have to borrow from it, and we do have to show that we needed the funds. And our state's budget is so volatile that each year the decision is made that we have to have that as a cushion in case they start up intra-year deferrals again, or more deferrals from year to year.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to use the Linwood funds if it had a chance of getting, that we would lose it. So.
Or if the balance we have in that reserve account wasn't enough. If we didn't do a TRAN and we didn't have enough internally to borrow, so we take the TRAN just to be able to have enough to make sure we make payroll. But we try to use Linwood or any of the internal fund borrowings when we can, because we don't pay interest on those.
Were there any other questions on the quarterly financial report?
Yeah, Lori?
Sure.
Do I interpret this correctly, that our adopted budget was a 5.7% reserve, and now it's slipped to 5? What is that, what am I missing?
That's only because of the MA fund balance draw that's in there. If those funds aren't spent, they won't be using the reserve. But those are funds that they earned in prior years and did not spend. And we committed to carrying those forward for those programs that are doing a time survey. So they do have access to those funds if they were to spend them. If they spent all the funds, our reserve would decrease by $324,000.
Who's they?
The programs that do it are the health center, sports med, counseling, I mean, a bunch of different departments on campus. You have to time survey to get any dollars. The dollars that we receive, the district keeps 50% to utilize for projects, and then 50% are given to the departments that time survey.
So this is a portion of the 50% of the district? No.
The district's portion is in there, yes.
So we could go 5%.
If they were spent, yes. Those,
Are they likely to?
I don't know what our trend is on spending now.
not typically, also, of this 324, 122,000 is the district's portion. So those we withhold for projects that are prioritized. And the MA program is continuing, so they owe us 160,000 right now. So when we receive that 160, what they're spending would come out of that 160,000 first. So there wouldn't be a drop in the reserve.
And is it fair to say, Leangela, this is the quarterly snapshot, so it's going to continue to adjust? I think what we want to focus on is our reserve position at year end.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's always some dollars that go unspent at year end that might make up a difference. And then the other part of that is we have a 6% reserve, back to the TRAN. That doesn't allow us a lot of cash that we're holding on to. The statewide average for community colleges is actually 16%. So we're one of the districts that needs the TRAN. And then at the end of the year, if the way our books look, it looks like we would be losing some more fund balance, but the reality of having some dollars drop, and we never know what those are, but just, a few of the 1,000 account lines that go and spend. So it usually makes up that difference.
I'm not suggesting you do anything different, I'm not suggesting anybody's not doing what they do, but I did want to share with you, at least this board member's apprehension.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, moving on to item number 4, which is our quarterly update to the budget accountability.
The first report on the budget accountability is our report of prior year actuals. So this compares the final adopted budget, the final working budget, and then the actual year-end actuals. As you see there in the first note, our ending fund balance was $2.7 million, which is a 5.98%. So we're getting very close to the board requirement of 6%. The note A, the revenue limit. Revenue limit is based on our P2 revenue calculations. And at June 30th, the P2 is still very uncertain. It's more uncertain this year than it's ever been in the past due to the RDA wind down. We're guaranteed backfill of dollars for the RDA wind down. But now they're arguing over how much backfill that actually is. And what the Department of Finance is doing is it's comparing the dollars that each county is reporting that they disperse to community colleges, and those dollars are higher than what the community colleges are reporting to the Chancellor's office that we actually received. Some of it's due to timing, some of it's, I don't know what the differences are. So the final recalculation of 1213 revenue limit will not occur until the P1, which will occur in February of 2014. The next note is on other revenue. As you can see, our year-end actuals was $2.5 million, and our final working budget was $3.5 million. Major decrease in other revenues was due to lottery and non-resident tuition coming in more than expected. Also, new accounting treatment of bad debt that we booked it as contra enrollment revenue rather than expense. So this was a decrease of $252,000. The accounting treatment of bad debt being a contra enrollment revenue instead of bad debt expense actually helped us significantly on our 50% loan, because bad debt is in the account code structure of 5,000s, which are detrimental to our 50% loan. The other thing that's going to help is our revenue limit, as we all know, is apportionment plus enrollment plus property tax. So now our enrollment has been decreased by $252,000 of bad debt. So theoretically, the apportionment would adjust to cover that, and that would happen during P1 of the following year. Letter C is the contributions to restricted funds. They were DRC. The shortfall for 1213 was $122,000. The Child Development Center had a shortfall of $163,000, primarily due to a decline in enrollment because of the facilities moved to the Heart of the Valley Church. The CDC was also closed at the end of fiscal year 2013, so this would be the last year that we see the backfill for the CDC. The total fund balance draw of $53,000. This was decreased by shifting expenses to Measure I, the technology. So $439,000 of technology expenses were still paid for by the warrant. Were there any questions on this year-end actual report?
Could you explain to me what the major components might be of that?
Bad debt is student accounts receivable, so we are unable to collect from the students. The AP that was recently put into effect, AP 5055, is helping us with our bad debt because now, if they've defaulted on any sort of payment plan with the district, we now have a zero tolerance that they can't just, restart up a payment plan that they know they're gonna default on again. They have to pay their entire balance before they get any sort of services. So no registering, no transcripts, nothing. So that's gonna help with student debt. For our,
How much might that save?
well, for our service area outcome, I analyzed that at year end, and our decrease in student AR comparing last year to the prior year, it was a decrease of 57%. So it is significantly going down that we are requiring these students pay.
57% of what?
It's about, well, we look here, 252,000 increase per year. So it used to be up higher than that by another 50%. The other thing, any sort of student fees, so non-resident tuition, health center fees, parking fees, all of those are included in that.
So you have outstanding student debt of over 350,000, is that right?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just the write-off portion. The actual student debt is over 3 million.
I guess I'm not big.
But how much of it is uncollectible or really old out of that 3 million?
Over 2 million. So the auditors require that we write off anything that's older than 1 year and an inactive student. So that's what's been written off as a contra asset. They're still sitting on the student's record. So if they require a transcript, if they want to come back for classes, we have that opportunity to collect the money then. We also submit them to COTAR, which is a program that if they qualify for a state refund on the taxes, we get paid first. So we do collect funds through those means.
Lori, I have a question.
Yeah.
So if I understand correctly, approximately 78% of our students are on some form of financial aid. So a lot of them are just flat taking advantage of the system, is that right?
No, the financial aid actually gets applied to their student record first, and we subtract our fees before we pay them their financial aid. So these are the students that don't qualify for any sort of assistance.
Financial aid's better, Greg, we get our money off the top.
If they can enroll and distract them from taking, how long are they allowed to stay and enroll without paying? Don't they have to pay before they actually start school?
Well, that's the change in the AP that Dan was referring to.
They didn't have to pay before they actually started school?
Before, we had a program where if you owed $99 or less, you weren't denied services. So students knew that. So they were keeping a balance of $99. So they would pay to get down to the $99 so they could still register, they could still get transcripts. So the AP 5055 is requiring that they actually pay all of their funds. And you think, $99 isn't much, but we had 20,000 students that owed us $99.
I'm sorry, I'm not happy about this.
Word spreads quick.
Are any of these students
Are
kept
they on math
around?
majors?
Any of them kept around just so we could get that time frame to get our FDS?
The debt goes all the way back to '01. So it's on the student records. If they require any sort of services from us, they do have to pay. One of the issues with 5055 is we also had issues where people would sign up for a payment plan because they knew all they had to do was sign up. They'd get their transcript, and then before they even made their first payment, they'd cancel the payment plan. So 5055 is going to help us with that also.
Well, what, I'm sorry.
The question regarding the new AP, is that something that came to us, or is that something that?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes, and there was a lot of discussion on that we did not want to allow our students to keep defaulting on payment plans.
Well, I don't understand why we even have payment plans. We don't pay, but we shouldn't want to come. What's the downside of that?
Well, it doesn't sound like the payment plan's working, but.
The payment plans are done through Nelnet, and for the students that use them correctly, it's a huge benefit for them. We have a lot of students that use the payment plans, that use them for what they're intended, and it works. We're also the only community college that uses Nelnet through our bookstore, so we allow them to put their books on the payment plan, and the students pay. So it's a good benefit for them. There are the abusers, just like there is in any population, and that's what we're cracking down on.
Well, I would certainly be supportive of any other future measures you come up with. People that don't pay their bills don't have very little respect for them.
Leandro, one other question, is the receivable from the students, does that include, that doesn't include their tuition, the per unit fees, does it?
Yes, it does.
Oh, it does, so it's that.
Yes, it's all student AR. Now, we do already have the policy that once they register, they have 2 weeks to pay or they're dropped. But if they're added on day one of the class, you can no longer drop them. Once they've attended the class, they can't be dropped for non-payment. So then they get, not until they're trying to register for the next semester, that they have to pay for the previous semester.
Can't be expecting to take their cell phone away from them.
Is it legal for us to take that $3 million and sell it to a collection agency and let them go after it?
You know, there's a lot of talk on that, on the chief business officer's listserv right now, that colleges are looking into that. We have sent some of our students, like some of our foreign students that owe us over $12,000, we have used Sequoia check collection for them. It's just something that we would have to look into. Sequoia check, I think their fee is 25%, so they keep 25% of whatever they collect. The COTOP is the same fee, they keep 25% of whatever they collect.
Would we be better off if they were, I mean, some of them keep 50%, but you're better off if you get 50% of something, it's better than 50% of nothing. But anyway.
If 10 years down the road, one of these people get a state tax refund, do we get paid first?
Yes, we submit them every year.
There's no time lapse after so many years?
We submit them every year, so every year we ask for the money. And if they get a state tax refund, then we get our portion first.
Well, I'd like to simplify this. Dan, I guess I'd like to say that 3 months from now, I'd hear a report from you about how we shouldn't work.
How we're gonna get it all back?
No. You know, that you looked at,
No more
the
bad
college
debt.
has looked at itself and decided that what we're doing is appropriate, or that we need to do these other 3 things too.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly sounds like an area that,
Well, we've done,
we really weren't quite maybe up to speed on it as we should have been.
We've done a lot of work on it, and maybe we haven't had this level of discussion at a financial level. I think you've all been aware of and approved policies and procedures that, as Leangela mentioned, were intended to benefit the student. I think you felt good about taking those actions when you did, because we're providing students with opportunities. This is the flip side of it. In those opportunities, if there are abusers, how do we respond to those? So,
We're part of the problem too. This is not rock deal. This is like,
No,
let's make that number smaller.
yeah,
Or have you say, no, it hurts too many people to make it smaller.
we'll
Whatever
just,
you say.
we've started to analyze this. We'll continue that analysis and bring an update.
Can I just ask one final question? So on a year, I know there's a couple $1 million in debt out there, but that's stretched over quite a few years. What's our last year's uncollectible debt? 1 year?
$252,000.
Okay, so that's what I had in my head. Okay. I want to make sure that I'm not over exaggerating or underestimating what that is. Okay. Got it.
The
Okay,
next-
keep going. Sorry for interrupting you.
The next report is the general fund budget. You get this report monthly on consent, and then quarterly we pull it off as part of the budget accountability report so that we can just highlight it. As you see here, one thing I want to draw your attention to is the one-time indirect reserve box, which is kind of in the middle of the page, on the first page. And really, this is kind of what we used to focus on in the past, the fund balance draw. This box is going to show you any time we're increasing any budget or decreasing any budget within the unrestricted general fund, what that cost is to the district. It's called one-time indirect reserve because we're using those one-time indirect reserve and mandate cost reserve to fund these expenses. So you see here the changes since the last budget was approved by you on October 14th. Has the indirect use has increased by $247,000. And there's the detail of that is mainly due to carry forward for facilities, the above base facilities, special and instructional equipment of $81,000. The CASAPA tentative agreement at $1 per hour increase, $72,500. What you will see in the December board meeting is that this will decrease. It's already gone down to $377,000 as the use of the indirect. And that's due to the student success plan dollars that came as an increase to the district this year. Those savings are $236,000, and what we're doing with those dollars is we're bringing the old matric program back up to speed where they're paying for the salaries and benefits of the people that they used to pay for prior to the program being done. So that will come in as a savings to the unrestricted general fund. As you see, letter A, revenue increased by $44,000. That was due to carry forward for basic skills going in of $74,000, and then some small reductions in categorical dollars, just due to chewing up the budgets. As you see there at letters B through I, those were the changes explaining the expense changes. Some due to categoricals, we have the carry forward for facilities increase of $120,000. The above base of $81,000. Were there any questions on this report or anything you wanted to look at in more detail? The next report is the annualized revenue projections as of September 30th. What it does is it has the first column is the adopted budget, and then our working budget as of September 30th, so that's what we're projecting for year end. And then it gives you the collected as of September 30th. The note I have here is we have not received our first quarter lottery payment, and we usually don't get it until October. So that's why you see nothing collected in lottery as of yet. Were there any questions on this report? The next report is our projections for expenses for 13-14. The first column is our adopted budget, and then we have our working budget as of September 30th, and then our annualized projections, and then the variance to working budget, and then year-to-date spent as of September 30th. As you can see here, for instance, benefits, our variance to working budget is $728,000. That's due to an issue we're having with payroll that script back in August didn't work correctly, and so it did not expense out all of our health and welfare expense. So that will be corrected in November. There were so many changes to payroll in October due to the CASAPA TA, the CSEA TA, that we weren't able to get those corrections in. But you'll see the next time I bring this report that the benefits will be back in line with the budget.
So really, this number is a moving target, we shouldn't focus on it so much, then you're saying this month, the variance.
Yes, the variance, that is a moving target. As we get more and more actuals, we have less projections. What this report is mainly used to highlight is we kind of focus on faculty overload and adjunct faculty to see if their budgets are in line, because we've had issues with projecting out adjunct budgets. So that's what we keep our eye on with this. The capital outlay variance to working budget, $449,000 underspent. That's due to shifting all of the technology back from the bond, back to the general fund. I just don't have it in as projections yet because I'm not sure how that's going to work its way out. Were there any other questions on that report? If you skip the next page, that's very small print. Those are just the monthly projections that are used to build that summary page that we just looked at. The next report is our quarter ending June 30th. This gives all the different funds within the college. As you see here again, what we've already gone over, June 30th ending fund balance of $2.7 million. And the note at year end, we owed Valley Business Bank on our municipal lease, we owed $5 million. And Farm Special Reserve, we owed $1 million. And the Linwood Reserve, we owed $2.45 million. So at what I've already gone over on the 311Q, as of September 30th, our borrowing is down to only the $1 million temporary loan with Linwood Reserve. The next report is the same report, but it's the quarter ending September 30th. I just wanted to remind you that this is a snapshot in time. This is not projecting year end. It shows as of September 30th, our general fund ending fund balance is $3.3 million. Again, that's high because this is first quarter. Were there any questions on any of these reports?
Any questions? No, thank you very much.
She does a nice job with that report. I mean, that's a lot of numbers.
It just looks better this year than it did a year ago. I sure like that.
I like how she keeps the format the same, so Christine, make sure that stays.
And she knows it. She knows this stuff.
As we get ready to take up the consent agenda, Madam President, can I remind the board that when we, oh, no, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I have the minutes and test the action.
That's an action item, okay. All items listed on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. An item may be removed from the consent calendar at the request of any member of the board or any person in the audience is considered separate. Does anybody have any items to be removed, or do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Greg, seconded by Earl. All those in favor of approving the consent calendar, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to action items. First up is number 11, for the Tulare campus funding budget. Ms. Staff.
Good evening. Dr. Larry Dudo and our finance department worked together to put this report together for you. But basically, our district does operate a 328-acre farming operation and dairy facility in Tulare, and it supports the instructional program for the College of Agriculture Division. And we did, years ago, the books and the budgets were not part of our financial system. In 2007, we actually brought them into Banner, which is our financial system, but we have not included them as part of our annual budget book. And we are going to start doing that next year. Next year, as part of our annual budget book, you'll see a summary level. So it'll be a fairly succinct summary level as part of the budget book for your adoption. But to kind of get caught up on that, we wanted to bring to you tonight the 13-14 budgets for your approval. And as information only, we also have included 12-13. And again, Dr. Duda did a lot of work with our fiscal department to get these budgets ironed out by operation. So you'll see all the breakdowns of the different commodities and farming operations that we have. And then also note there on the budget agenda item that the fund balance at June 30th, 2013 was $1,492,000. But there's also inventory and fixed assets as part of that. So the liquid fund balance was $523,987. And so if the farm wanted to buy something or pay for something or assist a program, it's the liquid fund balance that they would utilize. So the first report is our Banner report, and it's a budget report. And it is for the year 13-14. And if you look at the very first page, it's a horizontal report. It shows revenues of $700,000 and expenses of $700,000. We always try and budget our expenses to meet our revenues. And then if you follow it on down, you'll see the breakdown of where does that $700,000 come from. So you see all the different units. The first unit is a farm lab unit, and that had revenues and expenses of $568,000 each. On the next page, kind of go to the highlighted dark areas. The next is the farm residence, and that has revenues and expenses of $16,500 each. And again, these are budgets. We'll talk a little bit more about how they play out throughout the year. Dairy unit has revenues and expenses of $40,000, mostly in assumed rentals and leases of $40,000 there. The beef unit has smaller revenues and expenses of $7,500. And in the next one, which is the horse unit, there's revenues and expenses of $29,350. But you'll want to note, some of these do have a fund balance draw, which means there aren't enough real revenues, so we're using fund balance to run the program. So a few of these do have that. The next is the sheep unit, and that's $4,350 each. And that had a very small fund balance draw, $350. Next is the swine unit, and that's $1,975 each. It's pretty small, but they're using fund balance to run that program. Ornamental horticulture is a larger unit. It's $32,150 each, and it is using a little chunk of fund balance, $23,650 to run that program. The next spreadsheet is what we worked on. This is what Dr. Duda uses now for the farms, really there at the Tulare campus. And basically each column will tie to the budgets we just looked at in Banner. And if you went down to the very bottom, you would see expenses that match those that we just talked about. A few lines up, when you look at revenue, well actually the third line up from the bottom is revenues, which match the expenses. And then a couple lines above that, you'll see the fund balance draw. So we were referring to that are $47,000 of the total $700,000 revenues. Maybe you're a little bit even around. You did a good job. So the next page just briefly gives the high-level summary of the revenues and expenditures that we looked at. And for your information, because I think in the past, what Dr. Duda has mentioned is that we had these budgets existing and then we had what was happening. And no one had really gone in to say, hey, do our budgets in Banner reflect what our true expenses are that we're expecting and what our true revenues are? So this is really a year of truing that up. And he's done that now. And so that you know what happens when you look at the next report, which is just a summary report, a Banner report, that's the prior year, again, for your information only. But the adopted budget was $530,000 of both revenues and expenditures, whereas in our actuals, we ended up with $955,000 of revenues. You're there, it's right in the middle of the page too. Year to date, it's under the year to date, and $783,000 of expenditures. And if you want to see, well, what happened, where did that come from? Again, at summary level, but you can go through and see that contracted services, for example, came out about $170,000 higher. Electricity that was our first year, so I believe we were guessing at what to plug in for our electricity down there. But there's some costs, $110,000, so that was about $40,000 higher. But likewise, in our sales and crops, livestock sales were, $11,000 higher, and sales of crops were about $450,000 higher. So I think crops are always going to be a moving target, knowing what we're going to be able to bring in for the crops in a given year. But
so our budgeted crops were $450,000 higher than what we actually budgeted.
Our actual sales, and this is the last year, and again, I don't know how much detail went into the budgeting process last year. This year we put a lot of effort into it, but the budget was $350 and the actual sales were $804. So Dr. Duda could probably speak to maybe what occurred there. But so that's kind of new for you folks to see, but I want you to see we do have this in Banner. We're now working on an annual basis and then checking on it throughout the year to keep the spreadsheets that are kept by the staff who are tied to what's happening in Banner. of course, we go through all the proper authorization and expenditure processes now and do that, I think, pretty well. So we want you to see what's in Banner, and then next year we'll bring you the overall budget for as part of the budget book.
So the reason they have their own budget, because I don't believe Hanford has their own budget like that, or do they? Does Hanford have a budget?
Oh, no,
This
it's
is
not.
just farming operations.
Yeah, it's not
This is just
by,
the farming.
it's not by site, Greg, like Hanford versus Tulare. It's the district's farm and agriculture operation, regardless of the campus that it's on.
Okay. I guess I'm just confused as to why they would have a separate budget.
Ag
It's an enterprise.
and the farm.
Okay.
Yeah, the farm has, I think, long been an enterprise budget operation, right?
Since the 40s, and then in 2000.
When you started?
Well, yeah, 1944, that's when it started. No, we've always had it, it's always been separate, totally separate from the district. Had their own checking account, had their own savings account, did everything totally separate from the district. And then we started to bring it into the district, and in 2007, then it became part of the Banner system. And then the budgeting was never really trued up. And so I spent a great deal of time doing a 4-year average, finding out exactly, fairly close to what we had. And then we've trued that up now, and that one spreadsheet you saw, Lori tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock will see all the units, and we've expanded that, but that's on a 11 by 17 sheet. And so that's all being approved by the Farm Operations Committee and oversaw by the Farm Ag Advisory Executive Committee. So we're getting that process pretty well fine-tuned.
Larry, I have a question in terms of, in August, we approved a budget also. Will that be ongoing, or will they start to coincide with this one? Those are one of the crop budgets, but is that
The crop
separate
budget,
in here?
yeah, the crop budget is in that list that you have now.
Okay, so when we approved them in August, did they change substantially to here?
We did a little bit simply because, in August, we thought we were gonna plan something. Now we're planning something different, so
Okay.
that will be talked about tomorrow morning in the meeting.
Okay. And then my other question was on the classified salary. I noticed that went up quite a bit in terms of the classified salary abatement, and I know you've talked a lot about that, but is that different because you're putting in, is that basically just Jemmy, or is there anything else in there?
That's Jimmy and student labor on the farm. Remember, I've talked about that being a concern of mine because we're spending about $120,000 on labor between students, classified, and faculty. And so I've asked that at the meeting with the farmers is, hey, that's a pretty significant chunk about how much you're paying to operate a 320-acre facility plus the animal units. Now, the reason I increased that was because we moved in January, and it took a lot of student help to set up our shop, to set up our OH unit, and those kind of things. So that's where we'll start delving into it. Now that we have a good snapshot of where we're at, we'll start looking at those fund balance draws and saying, okay, can we continue to operate this area or this unit, like the equine unit? Well, when you look at the equine unit, you have the equitation team, that is part of the whole Title IX thing and the sports program. And so we know we're going to lose money in some areas, but that's part of the instruction piece. So, but you have a truer picture now than you've ever had. So
Yeah, that's for sure.
at least you can track it now.
Christine and Larry, is this summary page here, am I correct?
Yeah.
Is this a summary of the last column on?
That's a summary of each of the accounts. So if you go back, Megan, to the, okay, yeah, well.
Yeah.
It's a summary.
Yeah, right there. If you go your 10,000 accounts, your 20,000 accounts,
Right.
that's what that summary is.
And you did say something, Larry, about that labor was 120,000, but I see 72,000. But what am I missing?
You have the classified salary, you have the student salaries, but then you also have district-paid faculty salaries.
Right,
That's not in here.
Yeah, I think.
I'm just saying you've got about 120
total across the board.
The 72 of classified plus 27 of the benefits might have been.
So that's something that the operations committee will look at tomorrow, and we have about 10 really good farmers on there that have gone through the budgets, have projected out all the crops and those kind of things, so. But, again, we ended up with $523,000 in a fund balance last year, which was a lot better than one year we were $320,000 as a draw, so we're getting that back on where we should be.
Now, if you could just put it in the Leangelis format at the end of the year, Larry, where it shows what we projected and what we actually did, it will be complete.
That's next. You'll see that tomorrow morning.
Okay.
But the report stretches from here to that door over there. But tomorrow you'll have all the units, what the working budget is, what we spent so far, and what the balance is.
Okay,
And then track that from year to year.
Year to year.
So you can see it begin.
Right. Now, this is the benchmark. As Dolly talks about, that, we're going to put everything in context now. Then we're going to get our standard, then we're going to move on.
Otherwise, the data becomes pretext. You don't want that.
And you brought that to for your approval, actually.
Yes.
I would move that we approve the 2013-14 farm budget.
Second.
Been moved by Ken, seconded by Earl. All those in favor of approving the Tulare Campus 2013-14 farm budget, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Christine, staff. Item number 12, College of the Sequoias and Tulare Joint Union High School District Memorandum of Understanding for the Tulare College Center Joint Ag Facility Use.
Okay, you will recall at our joint meeting on October 24th, we had a great and detailed discussion about the existing memorandum of understanding between College of the Sequoias and Tulare Joint Union High School District regarding our respective ag programs and the possibility of shared facilities, relocating programs, merging programs, partnerships, etc. Well, we agreed at that time, based on some of the revisions that the Tulare Joint Union High School District had proposed to the current MOU, is that we would consider taking action now on this MOU as presented, simply as a way of updating the document to include current names. New staff are on board now, myself, Dr. Collegian included, current dates, but also reference in the MOU, and I think it's on item number 6, responsibility of both parties, COS and Tulare Joint Union High School District, mutually agree to the following. We did add as a general notation under A, cooperatively plan for agriculture education, and then put as most recently noted in the minutes of the joint meeting of October 24th. And that's the reason we submitted to you the updated version, the revised version of the minutes that you had at your place this evening. I want to bring to your attention that we added a little bit more detail to make sure that we captured all of the comments, sentiments, and steps that were outlined in those minutes. So our proposal to you tonight is to approve the update of the MOU, which simply updates names, date, and reorganizes some of the existing information, but also approving the minutes for the joint meeting, which reference the next steps that we'll be taking and the expectations for the two districts to work together over the next 6 months.
Put a proper format, the minutes of October 24th attached to the exhibit.
Correct.
So they're all together.
Yes.
You want one motion?
You can do them in one motion if you note the MOU and minutes of October 24th.
I have a correction. I just noticed on the minutes, Laura Fonseca was not there.
Say it again?
Laura Fonseca, one of their board members, was not present that night.
Oh, got it, you're right. So we will make that correction, Lori.
Okay?
So we approved them as amended then?
We'll make that
Yes.
correction of the board members.
The revised minutes as amended, in addition to the updated memorandum of understanding.
I so moved.
Okay, it's been moved to approve item number 12 with the amended minutes and with the revised minutes. Is there a second? It's been moved by Greg.
Is this for the minutes only?
No, that's for both.
We're approving the MOU and the minutes.
And you're gonna actually put in the minutes, or in the memorandum, reference to the exhibit A.
reference to Exhibit A, where would be the right place to put that?
It's under where Yale, it says that most of you know in the minutes, that
Right.
when you join meeting in October 24, attached here too is Exhibit A.
Got it.
That way, a year from now, we don't have that.
Don't find
Or
it.
somebody from Slurry Joint Union.
Please include that in my motion.
Well, I spoke with staff today, you know, because the Tulare Joint Advisory Committee has already received the minutes that are in our, not the revised ones, so we'll have to resubmit those to them.
We will. We talked about that today, and we said after we approve ours tonight with amendments, we'll send them a copy of the minutes we adopted.
Okay, it'd be nice if we were both approving the same thing.
I got you.
Okay, it was moved by Greg, seconded by Ken. Any further discussion? Right, we're good.
We have it. We have the MOU with the notation of attached Exhibit A. We have also the revised minutes as corrected.
Okay, so that was Greg's motion, moved by Greg, seconded by Ken. Any further discussion? John, you're good? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you for all the work on that, Stan. I think that'll move the process forward, maybe a little more.
Okay, can we go ahead and share that with the exec committee next week?
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. Because I haven't seen this yet.
Ours was done.
Okay, item number 13.
Item number 13 is a request on behalf of myself to be consistent with all other colleges who are a part of our C6 consortium. I think if you read the background on this, it's pretty self-explanatory. We are in the midst of a multi-year agreement as a C6 consortium, and because of the short time frame to have some of the resources expended, there will be a request on the part of the consortium to the Federal Department of Labor to consider extending the memorandum of understanding between us and them, the consortium and Department of Labor, for an additional year to allow the colleges a little bit more time to fully expend the original grant money that came. One of the things that the colleges agreed they thought would strengthen our request for that extension is if each of our colleges could do a reaffirmation statement. You're not reapproving the MOU. This is really just a simple document reaffirming the support that you initially put behind your approval of the C6 agreement and the grant that we've entered into as a member of the C6 consortium with the Federal Department of Labor.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by John, seconded by Greg. I just have a question. There's no dollars out of our budget?
No.
Okay, it's been moved by Greg, seconded by, who did I say?
No.
Moved by John,
Second.
seconded by Greg. Sorry about that. Any further discussions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes. All right. Last but not least, we have curriculum.
Okay, we're presenting this curriculum for your approval, recommended approval. And on page 1, we have 2 new classes, one that was done due to repeatability. We have modified classes, again, one for repeatability, one updating a course title. On page 2, all of the first classes are art courses that have now been approved for UC transfer, so we're changing the course number. 5-year review for an introduction to business class. There's the last modifications on the next page, and it was to comply with the course identification for the transfer program. Then we have deletions. I have one change on page 3. It's the third one, AGMT 112, and it shouldn't say no instructor available at this time. This course is actually never offered, so I'm going to update that to say course never offered. It's a standalone course. It's not tied to any degree or program. So that should actually say course was never offered, and it's a standalone course. The other courses are no longer being offered, and starting with the DPTI, those are the Dairy Food Processing Program, and we're no longer offering that program since we don't own the plant anymore through the sale of the Tulare at the Visalia farm. And then we go into page 4. These are deleted courses that are no longer being offered. And page 5, again, deleted courses that are not being offered. And let's see, then starting at the bottom of page 5, it is, again, like last time, we had some certificates that hadn't been and they were existing certificate that had been approved, but they were never entered into our tracking system, which is called Curricunet. And so that accounting one is being entered. The air conditioning systems is a new one, a new skill certificate for entry-level air conditioning systems. And then modifications for business marketing, entering into Curricunet for the health human services, and also entering into Curricunet for the industrial maintenance technology.
Looks like curriculum committee busy constantly.
Constantly.
And they're not being backlogged. Would you say they're still backlogged, or are we up to date? Do you feel like they're up to date?
We're up to date. We've been working so hard on the repeatability stuff that now it's time to get back onto the 5-year reviews. So we're really, Joey's on them and we're on them right now about making sure the 5-year reviews are up to date, but we're good. They're good. They work hard on this stuff, nonstop.
Any questions of Dr. Lisser? Can I get a motion?
Yeah, how come photography was not offered this
You gotta try to stay.
That actually, in the photography class,
year? You knew I was gonna nail that now.
There was nobody wanted to take it.
we actually, with our budget cuts 2 years ago, that was one of the courses that went under was one of the courses that was cut, and we never brought it back. It's one of the ones that was not part of a program, certificate, or degree, and cut for that reason. And repeatability, lots of students taking it over and over again. Sorry.
Well, you don't have photographers today, you have button pushers, digital.
All digital now, right?
Correct.
We still do have a photography class that's connected to our journalism program.
Part of the journalism.
Yes.
Okay, moved by Greg. Can I get a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ken. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Any further items of discussion? Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Norton.